I always have like way too much coffee when we do these because like I make well maybe not maybe I have a lot of coffee during the week, but I always like make a second coffee when we start these. So I'm like,
Well, how many cups of coffee do you typically drink a day?
lots.
Okay.
Like I
No
probably
judgment here. I
have
drink so much.
yeah no I know it's not like a ton. I mean okay so I have this like big mug.
Mm.
This is like 16 ounces. It's like a grande at Starbucks. Um, and I probably drink like 3 of those during the work week of caffeinated coffee,
Hell yeah.
like or close to. And on the weekend, I try to drink less. But I bought those Starbucks like creamer thingies,
Oh, okay.
and I have the caramel macchiato one, and it is so good.
Yeah, I've had that one. It is really good. I typically I typically wake up so late for work that I don't actually have time to brew myself a cup of coffee at home.
No, me either. I make them at work.
I like literally I'm late for work every day of my life. Like it is the
Are
most.
you really?
Oh, I don't think like okay. One time, a few weeks ago, I actually showed up on time to work. Okay, and even the janitor on my floor was like, "Wow, I never see you around here this early." And I was like, "Thanks."
I'm the person I get extremely anxious when I'm like 2 minutes late to something. Like I have texted my boss to be like, "Hey, I'm running late this morning," and I show up like a minute before she does anyway. Like I'm just absurd about it.
Well,
And yeah.
what's great is that I'm literally on the perfect team for somebody who's not punctual. I'm punctual for everything else in my life. Let me be clear. If I like
It's
am
work
like,
that you really
yeah,
don't
it's
get.
work that I'm not punctual for. If I'm like, oh hey, we should go grab dinner at 6:30, and you're not there by 6:30, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Like I'm angry.
Yeah.
Whereas work, I'm like, I have to be at work by 9. I'm rolling in at like 9:40. Like, oh, traffic was bad, and I have like a Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee in my hand.
Oh my God, Chris. I start work at 8:30 in the morning and I am there at like 8:28.
Okay, in my defense, I my work is such that like I make my own schedule. Like
Oh yeah, I
there's
don't.
like work that has to be done. Like I get to decide. Like I'm very much in control,
Yeah, I'm
which is
not.
great. Hey,
Public
Amy.
sector. Amy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Amy,
I'm spoiled.
and Zan thought it was next week too, I think. And like I need to be better about posting because typically a little behind the scenes, like this is what happens. It's like on Wednesday of the week, I'm like, hey Chris, are we doing live show this weekend? And if Chris says yes, then we are. And if he says no, it's next week, and I say okay. But we need to post the dates because we haven't been posting the live show
We've
dates
been
in the
very
Discord.
bad. Let me be
Yeah.
clear. I've been very bad. I've been very stressful past couple of months, and I've neglected. Well, I was neglecting my channel, and then I was neglecting the book club, and then I was like, I made the decision to take just 2 months off of the channel because I felt like this constant guilt about like not, what I'm trying to say, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
kind of tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a couple months off for the end of the year. Hey, Zan.
Zan made it back from groceries.
But yeah, no, I'm never on time for work. Never will be on
My
time for
work is
work.
like, to be clear, my work is very chill. It's I am not chill. Like they expect me to
Mm.
be there on time, and if I was chronically like a lot late, they'd be pissed. But there
I'm
are people who arrive like 5 to 10 minutes late every day, and it's not a big deal because they put in the time. Like it's fine.
I'm
But
very
I am not chill.
I'm very fortunate that my boss is also chronically late. Like it typically like I roll in at like 9:30 and he's like parking next to me and we walk in together. So it's like no big.
Like fist bump
Um,
in the elevator.
but like if I ever get a new boss, it's gonna be like real bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So anyway, all that to say, I drink so much coffee though because I get to work. I've not had a cup of coffee at that point, but my work has a really nice cafeteria that
Mm.
has like self-serve coffee. So you don't have to
Isn't
like
that nice?
talk to anybody. You can just like go over there and like grab a cup of coffee. So I have like typically 2 larges, which are like 20 ounces
Mm-hmm.
during my workday. And then I come home around 6 o'clock usually, and I have usually another cup and a half.
Oh geez, I don't make coffee at home. Well, so I make coffee at work. I am like the coffee. We're all a little bit coffee snob. Like we have Keurig, and then but the group of us that work up
Ugh,
in like administration, we're like no 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 no. Like we bring freshly ground coffee and make
yeah.
like pots of coffee for ourselves. I don't really make it at home. Like on weekends I do obviously,
Keurig is
but
the grossest
I hate
coffee.
it. I can't.
And I,
Like I'd rather just not have coffee.
yeah, same. I'm the exact same. And I cannot believe just like the absolute like deception that was pulled over the public that those became like the fancy things, like to have a
Oh, they're
Keurig coffee
awful.
maker and all that different stuff, because it's foul. It's
Yeah.
foul. It's
I
such
now I've
weak
done my like
coffee.
make your own pod. Like I have like I've used one of those kits where you like put in your own coffee and like use the Keurig to brew said coffee. And like it's not great, but it's not as terrible because it's not
Hmm.
stale, right? The problem with Keurig is it's like dry
Ugh,
coffee in a
this is
pod
not
for
good.
however many months before you. I'm the kind of person that like if that coffee has not been ground in the last like couple of weeks, I'm kind of over it already, which is awful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Amy,
is.
I drink a ton of tea. That I do drink. Like at home, I drink a lot of tea. I make a pot of tea like as soon as I get home at like 4 o'clock a lot of days.
It's officially hot cocoa season.
You know what? I skipped hot cocoa season. You guys can't see it here. I sent Chris a picture earlier, but we have got like the most delightful snow happening. Like I need to go out and shovel after this. But it is like the perfect, like light, fluffy snow falling down outside. It's the first like I lit my Santa's cookies candle for the first time. It feels like it's an appropriate season now. So good.
Oh, Zan is dropping some knowledge in the chat about Keurigs.
Yeah, I think
Says,
well partly because it's a trash issue, right? When they first like I think the guy was really pissed off that he made something. He didn't think it was going to be this bad. And like if you can comb the oceans now for Keurig
Well, I don't
pods.
think he probably didn't expect the popularity of it, but I remember for a
No.
while there, you like couldn't go into a Starbucks without there being like a massive display of Keurig coffee makers to buy.
Yeah.
Do you
Because
remember
they do
that?
like the Starbucks branded. Yeah.
Hmm. Um,
And Tim Hortons does it up here in Canada too. Like you can buy
mm. Did I ever
like
tell you
Joe
when I went
Coffee.
to Canada and I had Tim Hortons? I swear we're going to get to the book. After I'm done talking about this, we're going to get to the book. I went to Tim Hortons, and all of my like Canadian friends and friends of mine that had visited Canada really hyped up Tim Hortons. And I'm not saying it's bad because I really liked it,
Oh, I don't like it.
but it tasted just like Dunkin' Donuts in the
Yeah.
US. Like
Yeah.
there was no taste difference between the coffee, the donuts, even the menu items looked the same. The inside looked like a Dunkin' Donut.
They may be owned by the same company
I
now.
was
Like
convinced that they were owned by the same company after I tried it because I was like, this is Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Like, this is the exact same coffee I've had my whole
Tim
life.
Hortons got bought out by an American like owner,
Maybe
and I don't remember
I
the details, but I
I
remember
tried
that
to
happened.
find that out when I came home because I was, like, convinced, and it looked to me at the time like they were owned by separate companies, but,
Yeah.
I have never tasted 2 products that, like, tasted so
Yeah.
similar.
I can't remember the last time I've been to Tim Hortons. And I think partly like because I'm gluten free, there's
Mm,
so many things I can't eat. Like I don't go to fast food typically anyway. But
mhm.
if I had the choice, McDonald's coffee is weirdly good.
Oh, I love McDonald's coffee.
Like it's like good coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't drink Starbucks coffee. If I go to Starbucks, I order something that's not just
Mhm.
like
I like
plain
Starbucks
coffee.
coffee too. I
Yeah.
guess I'm like the opposite of a coffee snob, except for Keurigs, because I drink pretty much any like restaurant coffee. I just really don't like Keurigs.
Yeah, it's funny how when you work at a place, it really breaks it for you. Although I worked at Starbucks for like 4 years, and I had the opposite. Like now, when I go to a Starbucks, there's a very familiar smell. It's the smell of like all the syrups combined and coffee that I'm like addicted to. And I just was like so used to having Starbucks like for free or at a very deep discount that when I stopped working at Starbucks, I'm like, holy crap! Like, how do people do this every day?
Mm.
Yeah, I had the opposite. But should we
All
talk
right.
about the book?
Now we talk about the book. We are discussing the novel Hex by Thomas Oldheld. And controversial opinion, I loved it. 5
Like,
stars
tell them how much you
in
loved it.
in my top books of the year. Could not put it down. Like, I raced through this book. I was horrified while I was reading this book. I just completely fell in love with it. And I was thinking that this was going to be a banger, like a banger amongst the book club, until I checked the Discord and found that people's opinions vastly differed from mine. I just really loved it. I loved every second of it. Yeah, I can't
He
wait to
told
talk
me,
about
okay,
it.
so literally, can I just say, we text each other like before, and we're like, hey, we're good for noon, like ready. And so we're like, we're all good. And I'm like, okay, well, what would be great here is if you actually liked the book. And he's like, he said something like, I loved it. And I was like, lol, are you joking? I thought he was like, I thought he was joking. But
Nope.
no, like he said he's gonna put it on his favorites of the year. I was like, what is happening right now?
Let me be clear about something.
Me too, Amy Lynn. Sorry. I was also annoyed I spent $3 on this.
my mother raised me with an appropriate fear of the devil and how we invite him into the house. So I will not be keeping this book so as to avoid bringing Satan, but I am going to be sending it to a friend of mine that loves horror novels. This book scared the bejesus out of me. I have not been this terrified in a real long time. Like, I couldn't walk to the bathroom on my own. I, at one point, needed to take my trash out to the dumpster, and I could not make the walk to the dumpster. I loved it. So, how do we even summarize this book? It's about a town called Black Spring that's haunted by at this point like a 350-year-old witch who lives in the town. Her eyes have been sewn shut and her mouth has been sewn shut as well. Everybody who lives in Black Spring shares the curse. If you take up residence in Black Spring, you will inherit the curse. And the curse basically manifests itself in a few ways. One, you live in like dreaded fear that the witch could ever open her eyes. If she ever broke her sutures and the eyes ever opened, you know it would spell disaster, because the last time her eyes were opened in 1967, they have recorded evidence that multiple people were instantaneously killed. The other thing is that if you ever leave the town for any extended length of time, you become hopelessly depressed and suicidal, and to the point where you just will kill yourself. You're like plagued with all these really horrific images that eventually just drive you to suicide. And then all sorts of like weird things also happen throughout the town. And the city has maintained this extremely strict kind of surveillance state to make sure that the secret never escapes. Because basically, if it escaped and outsiders were to find out about this, the fear is that they would try to open the witch's eyes, that they would meddle and make things worse. That basically these people's only hope is to just basically live alongside this curse and accept their lot in life. And the book follows several characters. Like, it's quite a ensemble of cast. But I would say the main character you're probably following is Tyler and his father, Steve. Steve moved to the town 18 years ago. He didn't know about the curse. He inherits the curse. He raises his two kids with his wife. Tyler is 17 years old, and he's really fraying at the restrictions that have been put upon him and looking for ways to make the outside world aware of what's been going on in Black Spring. So that's the friction of the book mainly, is that Tyler is trying to make the world aware of what's happening in Black Spring without bringing down the wrath of God upon him. It's wonderful. So what did people not like? Because I want to hear
Everything.
I mean, I was reading some in the Discord, but I would like to hear from you, Jessica.
Well, and okay, so I think like chat saying, and I got to say there is a bit of a lag when we see the comments, so I'm sorry but the concept is good, right? And so when we, in our defense, in my defense, because I hated it, but you loved it, so it was fine. When we pick books, typically we haven't read them. There's been a couple of exceptions to that rule, but we look for, like, we literally Google like best horror books, and then we have a couple of different parameters that we follow. And this one came up recommended a couple of times, and the concept sounds amazing, right? Like, I wish we had a little bit more of the surveillance state element, because I thought that was a really cool like thing that made the juxtaposition between this really old witch that's been haunting this small town for hundreds of years and like the surveillance state of like I think it's 2012 that the book is set in. Mm-hmm. Like, that could have been explored, I think, a lot more. Like, when we read the blurb, I was like, okay, I can get behind this book. But when we actually got the book, like, my Google must have been broken. It comes up on lists, guys. Like, this was like a recommended horror title.
I remember when it came out. I remember people on BookTube recommending it.
But so there's a couple of things that people are saying in the chat that like I totally agree with. The writing style I thought was poor. And somebody noted in the Discord that one of the things that ends up happening is because we do have a bunch of different characters speaking, they all sounded the same. There was very little to distinguish. Like, there wasn't a lot of different character voice, except sort of for Tyler. But like, it felt like the author, and I looked at the author picture, by the way, he's younger than I thought he would be, which is a weird thing to say, but he looks quite young, but it feels like he's really trying to like talk how a teen would talk, how Tyler, like trying to find Tyler's voice, but it just came across like
I will say
not great.
I do agree that I don't know if I agree that the teenagers' dialogue was bad in terms of vocal talking, but I thought that the text messages they would send to each other definitely read
Yeah, they're fine.
like Gen X trying to figure out Gen Z lingo or something.
Yeah.
And also it was also just like weird kind of syntax that like young people don't actually use, where like they would sign off on their text messages. Nobody signs off on a text message.
No.
Like, you know who's texting you.
Yeah.
So stuff like that I thought that was kind of odd, but it didn't hinder my enjoyment. I didn't find the dialogue or the character voices to be indistinct, actually. In fact, I really liked the character of and I've already forgotten how to pronounce her name, the butcher's wife,
Griselda. Yeah.
I loved
That's
her
what fans
perspective
say.
chapters. I thought her character voice was spectacular. Getting kind of into the mindset of somebody who had a reverence for the witch was really phenomenal. That kind of psychosis, and also learning her backstory to kind of why she would have a reverence for the witch. You know, what she views the witch as somebody who freed her from an abusive marriage and all this different stuff. So I really liked that character voice. I really liked Tyler's character voice, to be honest. I found him very believable.
He was believable, and I think so. There was a couple things that came up that felt problematic in the writing, and it was one of those things where, like, I think there's a comment made about autism, and like I think it's a teen that says it first, and you can kind of like see how, like, I certainly when I was growing, like, teenage boys, girls, whatever, like, will say dumb stuff, but I think some of that was repeated by other characters as well. There was the thing about, like, right at the beginning, we all kind of tugged on the, oh, my son's gay, but it's fine. Like, I'm cool, don't worry. Like, there's just a couple little things like that that I didn't love. And yeah, Steve, here's the thing. Here's the biggest problem I have with this book, and it affects every other part of it, is that I didn't care about any of them.
Oh my gosh, I loved them.
I didn't care about Steve. I didn't care about Tyler. I cared about the dog, but so I skipped all of those pages. I just like was flipping through my iPad. I'm like, I'm not reading about this. So Fletcher the dog, number one. Steve. So you can see how if I don't care about the characters at all, what happens to them does not affect me really. It's really hard to buy into the horror elements and be scared when you don't care. And like as soon as you don't care, like we were saying this before we went live, right? If you love a book or hate a book, there's a lot of feeling in either of those. But if you don't care about the book, then all the scary bits, I was just like, it wasn't scary. Yeah, same Amy. Like the dog, I'm worried about Fletcher. I don't care that Tyler hung himself.
I love Steve. And the reason I like Steve so much is because I really found the conflict of the fact that he's this kind of like progressive psychiatrist, almost kind of yuppie-ish guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Works in a like some liberal arts university, all this different stuff. Like should have this very almost like urbanite kind of life. Instead, decides to like settle down in this little town, and is met with this like 17th century horror, and not just that, but also like the conservatism of the town, and all this different stuff. And like he can't escape, he can't leave. You know what I'm trying to say? Like this one decision to like settle here for work, and like take his like yuppie progressive ass to the countryside, like is
but
ruined,
then he's
right?
he's the one convincing Tyler. Like Tyler's the one that's like chafing at everything, and he's old enough to know that this isn't what he wants, but not old enough to like really make his own decisions yet or understand the implications. But like Steve is the one saying like, you need to stop doing all this, you need to conform. So like, yes, he felt that way, and clearly it had an impact on his marriage and all of that stuff. But like at the end of the day, he totally buys into it. And then at the very end of the book, right? Like nobody becomes more bought into the idea of this town and the witch than Steve does, because he sews himself shut. Like it's such a weird. Yeah. Okay. And this whole, like, we each get one kid.
Okay. I've been thinking about this a lot though.
I think it happens. I don't think this is completely unrealistic.
I think it happens. And two, he doesn't, and maybe I'm misremembering, I don't think he actually says any of that until Tyler dies. Like, I don't think he ever says, "Oh, like I prefer Tyler," or even has that internal monologue about preferring Tyler
There's
until
one
Tyler's
comment. There is a paragraph somewhere about him. Oh God, what was the line? He makes a comment kind of to that effect, though, that like it's the thing that you can never say, but like is true.
No, I feel like he did. I don't think he did before he died. I'd have to read the. I'm going to reread this book because I really liked it. But in my reading, if I'm misremembering, I thought that all that commentary happened after either he had died or maybe at a point where he was afraid for Tyler's life. But it
I
was
think it's
always
at
this
that
kind
point.
of, huh?
I think it's before Tyler dies, but after the scene where they drive to the bar or the cafe or whatever, and Tyler's deleting all of his stuff.
Okay.
Like it's when he's
It's
definitely afraid for Tyler's
Yeah,
like
like there's a
life.
fear for Tyler's life
Sure.
that's driving that. You
Sure.
know what I'm trying to
Yes.
say?
Yeah.
And like absent of that fear, would he have even felt that way? Probably not. But if you're terrified that one of your children's gonna die, like I can see that being a commentary that comes up in your mind. Like I
But then
don't
it,
think
it
that's
does become all
unrealistic.
consuming. And like I think I do like I agree with Zan, like I think it does go kind of weird at the end, but I'm also kind of like, okay, well, he's like absolutely destroyed by this grief and not being able to protect his son. And I think people do weird things when they're grieving
Mhm.
that kind of like I could see how this would play out. Like, okay, Matt's in the hospital and my wife, who I'm happy, like she's there, and like that's that, and I'm here. And then by the end of it, he's alone, right?
Yeah.
Like he's
Um so okay. I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. I also really loved the Jaden storyline and the public flogging and all of that. I was horrified by it. It was one of those things
that
where like
scene was great.
I could like see it happening. Like to me, there
Yep.
was nothing outside of the supernatural element of this book. Actually, let me rephrase that. If this supernatural element existed, I found all of the ramifications completely believable. Like
Yep.
I fully bought into the fact that this is how the town would react. I fully bought into the fact that this is how young people would rebel. I fully bought into like this is how people would react to that rebellion. Like all of it felt so real and horrifying that like that psychosis of the town really spoke to me.
I
Um,
think that chapter starts with a comment like we prepared for the flaw, like prepared for the punishment day as if it was the 17th century kind of thing. Like
mhm,
that felt very rooted in history, and also like that will be the scene that sticks with me is these kids getting marched to the town square and all the people like who show up there kind of excited and in this like festival atmosphere, and then watch these kids get beaten, um, and then kind of walking away in a daze from it all. Just kind of being like, okay, well, we thought we wanted that, but maybe we didn't want that. But now we've seen it and we can't unsee it. Like that one scene will stick with me, I think, as like something that was done successfully.
I want to point out Amy Lynn's comment. Like I do get where you're coming from here, but the
Yeah.
thing that kind of saved that for me is that she's abusive to him. She hits Jaden. Now I guess there's two other boys that we don't see their home lives. Um,
No, and I think we have to. This is one of those like in any story you have to suspend disbelief in some way, right? And I
mhm,
think the way that you have to suspend it in this story is to understand that like you have to buy into the idea that the whole town believes
mm,
that these rules are the be all and end all of their existence. You have to accept that they so strongly believe that anybody could die at any time if the rules aren't followed, that they would be willing to like let those rules and processes override kind of normal life.
um, yeah, but I mean the town is not like I feel like there is a paranoia to the town, but it's also not
For sure.
completely unjustified.
No.
Like these rules do keep them safe, and like even when one stitch is removed, like people start dying,
Yeah.
you know. So like,
Oh,
um,
that was a successful little thing that I forget how it was done. Was it a flashback? Was it a file? or was it a video file? Like they do that thing where they was it in the 60s or whatever, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
cut the one stitch and stuff. Like
God,
that was
horrifying.
creepy. Yeah.
That was horrifying. Um, yeah, so like, and then even after she gets stoned, somebody dies. You know,
Yeah.
so like, I feel like some people are saying like, oh, it's just the town that's evil, but like, I think she's evil too. Like, I don't think it's just like the psychological manifestations of this town driving her. Like, she's
No, I think
definitely
it's,
out for revenge.
but the point is that it the town is evil, and there's a symmetry between the town was evil and it was the town that did
Mhm.
it to her in the first place, and like it's been 300 whatever years and the town is still evil, that they've done
Yeah,
it to themselves again. Like I think there's some like literary symmetry trying to be developed there to explain, like, just I don't know, it's one of those, like, this happens a lot when you do like anything with a historical element to it. It's the, that Battlestar Galactica, all of
yeah.
this has happened before, all of this will happen again kind of thing.
Why did Burke side with the other two? Barack. I don't know how to say that name. That's a good question. Actually, that is something I will say I didn't quite fully get either. Um, the dad at one point says that like people just sometimes snap in this town. You know, some people just can't handle it. Um, but also like if you think about it, like he was the one that was chosen to hear the whisperings, and then she like came to his room or his like house. Like there's a part of me that kind of buys into the idea that he would turn that hatred on her. Like I don't think that's too unreasonable.
No.
Blueberry, we are talking about Hex by Thomas Oldheld. If you've not read it, spoilers beware.
Spoilers beware, everything goes terribly.
Yeah,
It's
a horror novel. It
a
all goes
horror novel.
bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's something, I was thinking about this, like, what is the point? Because we read a different genre all the time, right? I'm kind of trying to think a little bit about genre conventions, what makes a horror book, and what is the point? Like, what are you as a reader supposed to get out of it? Despite the cool concept and the story and whatever, like, what are you supposed to take out of it? And like, because we talked about this so many times, because I listen to and like read about a lot of true crime, the idea that these teens have gotten caught up in something that is like a bit beyond them, and now it's who's like, I have seen that so many times in various true crime elements where 3 teens or 4 teens or whatever get involved in something, and then it's like who's going to turn on who,
Hmm.
and who knows what, and like who is saying what. Like there was something that felt very grounded in that element to me.
Yeah,
But
and
I
I
also
think that's
started skimming at this point in the
it's
book.
also very true. I think to like real life. Like I was definitely that like nothing this extreme, obviously, or nothing this dangerous, but I was definitely like the type of kid that in my teenage years got into a lot of like not even want to call it drama, but like stuff like where you were just hiding a whole bunch of crap from the adults in your life. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right? Yeah.
And like, you know, you could see how you could like stumble, or like who knows what, who's revealing what, that type of thing. Like all of that made a lot of sense to me.
Well, yeah, and you think like this was again set in 2012, and if you fast forward it to now, it could be an even different conversation. But like when I was their age, like I had a cell phone, like Facebook didn't exist
Hmm.
yet, like it was a different thing. And so you think about, the capability of kids to hide things and to develop like this whole like project that Tyler's developed, this website, all of this web content, like that kind of thing. Like that felt like something that they would do,
And
right? They
also,
don't like the rules and whatever, and this is how they react.
also the like belief that like the belief that social media or letting the internet know what was going on could affect real change in your life was so
Hmm.
palpable in 2011 2012
Yep.
because of the Arab Spring.
Yep.
Like I remember like I was in high school, I was a senior in high school and all of it was really going
So
down.
young.
I know, little baby. And so, and like I remember like feeling like the world was globally involved and
Mhm.
affecting these changes because of Facebook,
Yep.
And so their idealism that they could create this website, that they
Yep.
could, if only they could shine a light on what was going on, really made sense to me in the time period that the book
Yep.
is set,
Yep. Agreed.
against that backdrop. Um, so yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things like I think, yeah, you have to put your brain back there because I think now we have a slightly different perspective of the power of the internet and social
mhm.
media in particular. But definitely then I remember, yeah, there's this hope, right?
Yeah,
That and he's got this plan, right? Tyler's got this plan of who it's going to go to, how it's going to get there.
it's kind of almost funny now to think back on like how the image of Facebook from 2011, 2012 to now 2021 has like fallen from like it being the kind of thing that was going to save democracy, and liberalize, the Arab world and all this different stuff to, the thing that is now like, bringing fascism to America.
Yeah.
Is kind of a hilarious trajectory in a dark way. Um, but anyway, it's a little off topic from the book.
That's okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Jaden storyline here
Hmm.
because that to me is kind of like the plot that like really got under my skin, because there was a part of me that like, as horrific as what Jaden was doing to the witch and stoning her and stabbing her and stuff like that, I felt like this odd mix of sympathy for the witch, but also like, yeah, do it, stab her. Like, why is no one enacting physical violence on this woman? Because like, if you had to live your whole life, under these like super like horrid rules, your father kills himself, all this different stuff. It made so much sense that like a reaction to that from someone that's 17 years old would be to enact
Sure,
this
but
violence.
like we were saying earlier though, the point of it is like you have to buy in that everybody in this town feels like the rules are paramount to their
Hmm.
survival. And for, this is one of those things where like you drop in on a story and it has to be at the most interesting time or else what are we even talking about? And so, this isn't the first time we've had 17-year-olds come of age in this town. Like, yes, the
Yes.
technology is a little bit different, but like don't poke the witch. I did feel bad for her in that moment. Like, and I think it's interesting. There's a couple moments where we're supposed to like we get her backstory early on, right? We're supposed to feel bad for her in that moment, obviously, that like
Hmm.
this thing was done to her in the first place. And I did feel bad for her in that particular moment because she's got that really like dopey kind of, she walks into the pole, right, and falls down. Like
That
she's
was
carrying
really
around a
funny to
dead
me.
peacock. There's a grotesque humor to it. And I did feel bad for her in that moment. And Jaden felt like the kind of like small town teenage boy that I really wish we didn't have to deal with, but it
I
seems to be in every small town everywhere.
I like had a I would say I had like an initial moment. It's like when the violence is first enacted on her, I feel somewhat sympathy. But like the more you think about it, I'm like, this is a supernatural being that's lived for 350 years, and like that's enough to pay for whatever revenge this town. Like, yes, like stone her. Like there was a part of me that really felt for the kids that were enacting the violence on her. Like there was a part of
Yeah.
me that was like, this is like like I have a sympathy for the imagery of a woman being beaten, but like what she actually is, I don't have a sympathy for like violence being enacted on her.
Well, there's no end game, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not like there's a curse for 1,000 years. Like there's nothing like it's just a curse forever. And I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
go back up
exactly.
to Zan's comment.
Yep.
Like I agree that this could have been like something that really drove the story. And when we first hear about Hex, like in the first couple of chapters, and like kind
Mhm.
of see what that looks like when that new couple is looking at the house, right? And all the security cameras and everything that goes on, like that could have been such an interesting part of this. And I guess it underpins the story in that that's what's motivating Tyler, and sets kind of everything in motion. But it just could have been explored better. I think I would have been more engaged with it in
I
that way. That like the town is meant to has been able to keep the secret because there hasn't been an effective way to share the secret, and
I
now there is.
I did find it really funny that going into the town's history, you learned that like presidents used to be aware of the town and like
Yeah,
responsible, and then like somewhere
yeah,
around Abraham Lincoln, like people just kind of quit caring because like the town
yeah,
continued on and there was nothing else.
yeah.
Um, like um, I did find that really funny. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that the internet thing kind of was explored pretty well. I mean, you have the idea that like Tyler has a YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Um, and he he uploads part of his life. So like but then things have to get deleted. So I feel like it was explored, but also the internet is surveilled. Like
Yeah.
so they know like the cell phones that are issued and stuff like that. The town has complete control over that. So hmm, I don't know.
I
I
just
feel
wish
like
it was drawn out a bit more. Like
yeah,
there's
maybe.
certainly elements there. I just wish it had been a I don't even know how you would do it. Like this book is such a mess for me that like I don't even know how I would get it to a place where I was like really loving it. But it just felt like that is an interesting conversation to have, right? Like
Mhm.
you think about the trajectory of history, and for so much of human history, things don't change that quickly. And all of a sudden things are changing at this like insane pace. And again, kind of that juxtaposition between modern technology and this 350-year-old witch, like that's cool to me. Like that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Amy. Okay, Amy's like comment that
Whereas
she just made here. The
yeah.
what are the witch's actual powers? No idea.
She can definitely make them kill themselves. Like
Sure.
that whispering is like that's like a definite like I don't think that was and she's looking to. And even like um she's pretty possessive like with that peacock thing. I thought that was really interesting cuz like the peacock was alive and she was happy with it alive until they wanted to take it from her. And then she
Yeah,
killed it. You know what I mean? Like she's definitely vindictive. Like I don't think she's like some like
but is that a power? That's not her power. That's just like her personality.
yeah, but she also like I'm pretty sure she like supernaturally killed that peacock. Like there was like something pretty
Well,
violent and
there's
gross
that
that happened.
thing too where like other people in the town die when something happens,
Yes.
right?
When
So there's
she
some sort of something there.
and then also like when they put the sunglasses on her, like
Hmm.
it was all that sulfurous stuff. It was really gross. So like she's definitely like evil. like I don't know. I don't have a
Sure.
ton of sympathy for her. Like I have a sympathy for the woman in 1600s. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
I don't
the
have
human.
yeah, I don't have sympathy for like the present day witch. And I definitely think that and then like when she does open her eyes like leaving the town at all is a no go. You
Yeah.
can't step foot outside the town. So her powers are
I
definitely
I think the thing for me is like understanding her motivations. So I understand that what was done to her and to her kid is what motivates her, right? Like that is the starting point for the whole shebang.
Mhm.
But this feels a little bit like in a superhero movie when the villain just wants to destroy the world and you're but like how does that help you? Right? Like how at what like how is that going to resolve anything for
I mean,
you?
I kind of like
Like when does this end
understand.
for her? Like at what
Well, the
point
thing
is
is,
revenge complete?
the thing is, it's never going to be complete. I mean,
Well, that's silly to me. Like
if you were forced to kill your own child, like I don't think that revenge would ever be complete. Like I don't think you.
I guess,
I
but
think you would die with that, like on
there's no
you.
end game, right? And I
And there's
think for me that yeah, yeah, being evil was like her like it just felt like there was a lack of motivation in insofar as like there's a clear motivation
and
when she starts, but she does like then what? Just forever. We're just going to forever do this?
she also gives them smallpox. That's her other little power, which I thought was really funny at the end.
Like
Um,
it just I you know what? I did love the scene. I thought there was some really great and I think we noted this in Discord. There's a couple of really cool moments, little bits of the story that really worked. And I think the scene at the end where everybody in the town like vanishes into the woods and then keeps walking into the
oh
was it the
god, that
Hudson
creeped
they
me
go
out.
into, right? And just like walk into the water and kill like I thought there was something really eerie and like successful about that. And it was like a paragraph. It wasn't very long, but I thought that was cool.
Hmm. Yeah. It did make me wonder what was going to happen when like the rest of the world found all these bodies
Yeah.
floating in the river.
Yeah.
Um, So
and finds this one guy, and Steve kind of hints at it, I think, in the epilogue, right? That like somebody's going to find this town vacant of all these like couple thousand people,
just
and
like
Steve's
they
going to
did
be the
in
only one left.
yeah, just like they did in the 1600s. I'm trying to keep up with comments, guys. I'm sorry.
No, I'm reading through.
Yes, that was pretty creepy. Oh, I did like the imagery of her handing those vegetables to the kids.
I missed that.
Okay, she like goes to the Hoffmans who have the two kids, and she like hands each of them a vegetable. So like one's a carrot, and I can't remember what the other one is, and they like eat it, and then when they eat it, they want to follow her, and like they like leave their parents, and then like somehow she like changes their clothing into being like 1700s level style clothing, just like her own children, and she like parades them around the town.
Okay, with that is the most unbelievable thing we've said so far. That you're going to lure people away with vegetables, like give them
it wasn't
sugar.
Like, well, when they ate the vegetable, they were shocked by how sweet it was. They were like, "Oh, it's sweet," and then they left their parents. So it was very like kind of like a Hansel Gretel
the
kind
terrible
of thing.
pate. That. I read the comment in Discord like weeks before I read the thing in the book, and when we finally got to the scene in the book, there was lots of mentions of pate, and I was like, "Is this it? Is this it?" And then we finally got to it, and I was like, "Oh God, this is it." Yeah, like I don't know, man. Like I'm not luring people here with carrots and onions.
Oh, but I think, okay, the ending imagery though, I think she did bring Tyler back to life.
I think she does too. It's the knocking at the door,
it's the
right?
knocking at the door, which is very reminiscent of the Monkey's Paw, the ending of the Monkey's Paw. Have you read the Monkey's Paw before?
No.
It's an awesome horror short story, which I won't spoil the ending of because I thought you had read it, but it's a horror short story by W.W. Jacobs, I think, from like the late 1800s. And the ending of the book reminded me very much of the ending of the Monkey's Paw. Also, if you're interested, if you go to your podcasting app, and you search for the Monkey's Paw, the BBC has a version of it being read by the novelist David Mitchell, and it's a fantastic audio version. Great 30-minute listen.
Interesting. There's a bit of that, like it's like the Raven element, right? Where the Raven there's that constant like tapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then Steve being unable to like handle that, right? Like he hears this knocking at the door, but then decides to sew his eyes shut.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very open-ended, right? It's open-ended in the fact that like, yes, everybody dies except for Steve, and Tyler is back, but like we don't know anything.
Sorry, I'm reading
Like
through.
just everybody. That's the thing, Zan. Like I think that's the thing for me is there's no end game. There's no point at which like the witch doesn't have anything she's trying to accomplish. I mean, she kills a bunch of people, but then she doesn't kill I don't know. Who cares, right? Like that's the thing about this book for me was like I just didn't care, and that's worse than hating it.
Well, I kind of wonder. I think that Steve is about to start haunting the town now.
Great.
But I guess like
But there's nobody there to haunt.
I think people will come back. There was nobody there to haunt in the 1600s either. Remember they found the town abandoned.
Yeah.
People resettle, and I think I don't know. For me, it works because it's the idea that this type of like violence in your history, it has consequences down the line.
Sure, but we haven't learned anything. He needs to protect his nipples. There's so many nipples. Hi, Henry.
Was there a right thing to do that they didn't? No.
It seems like no. That's the thing.
But I don't think that there has to be. I think oftentimes in life there is no right choice to make.
It's not that I need hope in a horror book. Like I'm okay with things ending like really tragically.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that scene of like all the bodies floating in the river by the end of it, like that is affecting. It just felt like, okay, and the loop starts again. Cool. Don't care. And I think going back to what I said at the beginning about not caring about Steve, had I cared about Steve and invested in him, watching him lose his son, like know that his son is in danger, do everything he can to try to save him, then to come home and find him dead and like go through all that grief and then become the thing that he like kind of hated. Like that would have been an affecting character line had I cared about Steve. So I can see how that could be successful for people. I do.
It was successful for me. I'm the lone defender of this book. I'm like out here like defending it on all sides. It's all coming at me. Yeah.
I was so delighted when you said you loved it because I was like, this is going to be a really short live show. If not,
I mean, I agree that there's nothing the town like could have done differently, right? I mean, they could have, like made it a more egalitarian society. They could have not enacted this type of surveillance state. They could have, try to get help from like West Point. But the thing is, like, there was a period of time when the outside world knew what was going on.
Yeah,
and they weren't able to fix it.
Or couldn't help, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, those presidents, like the president of the United States knew, and they couldn't fix it. And so there is a certain point where you just, like, they're not totally wrong in thinking, like, this is just the lot we've been served in life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't know. Amy asks if I have read Stephen King. I have tried to read many times The Dark Half. Because a friend of mine gave it to me and very much recommended it very highly. And I've really struggled with it, and I cannot make it past like the first couple of chapters because I don't like the writing style in that one. But I've heard from other people that like that's not his best one. So like if you have a recommendation for a really good Stephen King, I would read it. Probably not his Dark Tower books. I
tried Dark Tower. I think I read the first book and I didn't so much care. Now I will say 11/22/63 was amazing. I gave that book 5 stars. I liked the writing. I loved the story. I thought it was so interesting. And I was like, oh, I haven't given Stephen King a fair shake because I thought he just did this thing, which was horror. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that he could do this other thing, which I really loved. But I'm also not like need to go back and find more horror books.
I think his novel Mr. Mercedes, that series is like an actual just kind of straight up murder mystery series.
I think so, yeah.
I think it won the was it the Edgar Award? I think it won the Edgar Award.
Could be.
Pet Cemetery vibes. I might give Pet Cemetery a go.
Yeah.
No, I definitely, by the way, I get why some people wouldn't like this book. Like I'm not completely indifferent to the criticisms. It just really worked for me.
But I think that's the point, right? Like as we go through all these various genres, it's about finding what works for you or what doesn't. And I think there are things that like I have found things that I find horrific that work for me. They tend not to be in the horror genre. Not that I've read a lot of it. They tend to be in true crime.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of see what you're saying with the true crime. I tend to enjoy more things like this. This did not kind of inspire me to like want to go pick up a whole bunch of horror books, to be honest. Largely because as much as I liked this book, I did not like how scared I was. Like I was really horrified, like heart racing, adrenaline going, all that.
Jeez. I was like flipping through iPad pages,
really?
like I could. Yeah, I was just like, okay, whatever.
Golly, that was not me. I was like wide-eyed and horrified the whole time.
Okay, so that's the thing too. Like, okay, there were elements of the story that were grotesque and like certainly presented some strong imagery that made it feel like a horror book. I didn't find any of it scary though. I think Heidi said something similar where in the Discord where she said it's not scary, it's just like kind of gory, grotesque, horrific.
I found it horrifying. I found the idea of somebody who could just pop into your house, who you could enact no violence against. I found that horrifying. That type of invasion, and even from the beginning, like when they're kind of joking about it, when she's like,
that's why it didn't work for me. Because the first time we see, I think it's like the first time we see Catherine, right? We're in their home, in the family home, and she's like in the other room, and they throw the dishcloth on her head, and like they aren't scared, and so I'm not scared. If they were like every time she showed up, everybody like stopped what they were doing and like had like a plan, like an emergency plan in place for what happens if she comes into your house, that would have been scarier for me. But the fact that they don't care and are not actually scared about it makes me not scared. Yeah, it was gross, disturbing. Yeah, there was that.
So sorry, guys.
Could make a killer movie. I do think there's especially honestly, going back to our discussion about like the surveillance stuff
Right.
about HEX,
Guys, sorry.
like the series. I'm gonna add Zan's last comment. I think if you modernize this by another 10 years, like brought it up to present day and the present day level of technology that we have and what that's capable of, I think this could be a really successful movie. I agree. And I think I need to see it a little bit because again, when I am not invested in the story or the characters, reading the horror things, like I'm not invested in it being horrific either. Like I'm just completely out of the whole story.
Also, I just wanted to respond to Thomas. I have not yet, Thomas. It is going on my January TBR. I'm making a whole list of books I want to get to, like right when the new year starts, and that's one of them. My father has been pestering me about it ever since I made that video with him, as he rightfully should, because I did make a deal. The writing, yeah. I liked the writing. If my standards fallen or something, everyone else really didn't like the writing style. I really liked it. There was something about the writing style and kind of its almost matter-of-fact delivery at times that really got under my skin and worked for the fact that like people just like have to live with this. You know what I mean? Like this is just part of their day-to-day life. You know.
I mean, I think there's always this thing too, like your reading is so affected by what else you've been reading. And I think coming off of Guy Kay and his writing style for this, and then some of the other books that I've read in November, not that I've read a ton this past month, but it is jarring sometimes if the writing style doesn't work for you. And in this case, we were talking in the Discord a couple of weeks ago about people like just not reading the book or DNFing. I'm like, I can't. It's going to be real awkward for Chris if I just don't read the book and show up for live show. I'm forced to read this book that I'm not really enjoying, and I don't think the writing is working for me. And then comparing it to the other stuff that I am reading, where I think the writing is excellent, like it does this book a disservice a little bit too. And I think as readers, like that happens to us all the time.
You know what?
Right? We can't separate it from the context in which we read it.
That's interesting because I just got done reading Paladin of Souls by Lois McMaster Bujold.
Mm-hmm.
And that book, and I felt this way about every single Bujold book I've read, where like she can really write a sentence, like you can read it and be like, oh, it's a great sentence, but like I'm just utterly unmoved. And also I find oftentimes that her writing is too clever for her own good. Like there's times when I'm reading it and I'm like, I'm more confused by this scene because you couldn't just come out and say what the hell is happening.
What it was.
You know what I mean? And whereas this one, like it was refreshing going from finishing that book, which I really slogged through, to be honest. And I was very upset because the first half of it I really liked, and the second half I was really disappointed by. Going from that kind of very well written slogfest to something that was more direct in its imagery, more direct in its plot, and more accessible and also short. And just kind of allowing me to kind of feel that adrenaline kind of viscerally just really worked. So maybe like if I read it at a different time, like this wouldn't have it worked as well. But for me, it was wonderful.
And I think typically, and I think I've said this in a couple of different live shows with books where things being said in a very blunt and direct way, I often find successful in that I don't need the author to tell me why something is awful. If they just say it and move on, like I know it's awful. Like I do think that works super well for me. Oh my God, my dogs are losing their minds. I know. I think somebody has got their snowblower out and is cleaning my driveway. Come here. And so the dogs are up. Oh gosh, this is going to be a disaster.
I've been very lucky that my cat has been like very well behaved.
Okay. Yeah, we have a Charlie. Sorry guys, he's just going to keep wandering.
He's so cute.
He's very sweet. And this is the thing. As soon as we got to the thing about Fletcher in the book, and I'm like, and skipping, I'm just going to skip right through it. I couldn't do it. And I've said, I think to you, Chris, at least, like there's been a couple books I've read where there's been like violence to dogs, and I'm like, and I'm out. DNF. Just not going to read it.
Zan says he was coming off of Flannery O'Connor short stories.
Oh, yeah.
That would be an experience. And then, so you think, Amy, that like, do you think King is significantly better? I might have to read Stephen King now. I've always kind of chafed at the idea of reading a King novel, which sounds so elitist, but they just don't. I don't know. They've
never appealed to me. Like 11/22/63 was the first King book that I was really interested in.
I love the movie Misery. Like, the movie Misery is probably,
Haven't
like,
seen
my
it.
top films of all time. Have you seen it?
No.
It's so good. It is so
I don't know
horrifying.
that I've watched any Stephen King adaptations. I'm trying to think.
And Misery might be the only one I've seen, but, like, Misery is phenomenal. It's like Kathy Bates at her most perfect. I think that was her debut film. Like, I don't think she had done anything before then. And, like, it is the best. Like, she is awesome. So then, but I've never been, like, inspired to pick up her other stuff. I guess, like, supernatural horror really scares me. I'm, like, one of the weird people that's, like, I can't, like, I know a lot of people are like, I find serial killer stuff more horrifying because, like, that's actually real and can happen. I'm the opposite. I find this type of stuff, witches and all that, way more horrifying. And I don't know why, but, like, for me, it is the idea of, like, ghostly figures and things like that, like, send me over the edge. And most of the King horror novels I hear about are more on that end of things.
Yeah, and it's funny how, like, not all serial killers like really freak me out, which sounds awful to say. Often it's how they're portrayed, right? Like how dramatic the documentary is, or whatever. Or there'll be a specific element of a serial killer's MO that really like sets me off, and others like not so much. But yeah, it's supernatural stuff. I don't necessarily find. Actually, I will say, years ago, I read The Historian. I forget the author's name. Russian.
Yeah.
I was terrified about that book. Like, that scared the bejesus out of me. And I think it's partly because it wasn't really supposed to be like a horror book. It wasn't really just that, but it had those elements where there's some really scary. Oh,
it was Elizabeth Kostova.
Yeah.
So for example, one of my favorite novels, like, of all time, and I really want to reread it soon, is The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. Have you read that one, Jessica?
Yeah.
Yeah, that book horrifies me.
But that's creepy.
That book is also, like, you're kind of left with that book being like, was this supernatural? Was this psychological? Was maybe somebody lying through their teeth the whole time? Like, what is happening, you know?
Yeah. I have seen Shawshank.
And
once,
so, like,
maybe.
That's like usually my kind of max level of horror, or if like something is supernatural but presented in a way where it could be like, it could be either, like, it could just be the imagination. Also, like, The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell kind of plays with that as well, and that's usually like where my brain can like kind of handle that type of stuff. This is the first time I've ever tried to read something that was like true supernatural witch, like, horror terrorizing.
That's what it's meant to do. Yeah.
And there is no like, is this just all in people's head? Like, it's truly real, and that horrified me.
I think I have The Silent Companions on my shelf somewhere. I haven't read it yet.
It's really good. That book is very, very frightening.
Yeah.
And
let's talk about Zan's comment here, Chris, about the Dutch American thing. How did you feel?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this. So first of all, I will like plead complete ignorance. I didn't read his afterword, and I did not realize going into this that the translation, the original writing, was set in the Netherlands, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So I went into this having no idea. And in fact, I left it thinking that it must have definitely been written originally to be set in America, because to me, the way people reacted, the psychology of the town, the kind of conflict where people kept saying, like, aren't we still America, and all this different stuff, like, really rang true to like small town life.
I'm so sorry. Can I just say, there is a line that as Americans we have the right to know the truth that felt like the most like planted, oh yes, this book is set in America line I have ever read. I died.
I think it's really real.
It is really real, and I find it hilarious.
Talk, you know. So
only
like,
Americans have this like, I'm an American, it's my right.
So like, to me that felt like very real. And I had no idea that the book was, the only thing that like kind of tipped me off at the beginning where I was like, what the heck, was when it opens up describing a Dutch barrel organ, and I was like, what in the entire hell is a Dutch barrel organ. And I had to like Google it. It was like the first thing I did when I started reading the book was to Google an image of that.
And we get that handoff, right? That this was like a Dutch settled town. It used to be called something else,
Yes.
like much of like the kind of Northeast coast. And like then like over time, these Dutch settlers become like Americans.
Yes.
Like we get that kind of like literary, like thematic handoff
and like
that the author does. But
annexed by New England, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me felt like there was nothing about this book where I was thinking culturally this doesn't fit. Like it felt very authentic to me. And I kept thinking to myself, like, maybe he lived in the US for a little bit. I was like, maybe that's why he said it in the US. So I kept thinking like he had definitely like lived in the States or did currently live in the States, like because it felt very real to my experience. I mean,
I also think it feels very real to American history. Like I think if he as an author was going to choose to set this somewhere else than his original setting, picking that time frame in America, like there is something very kind of dark. We've got like that kind of Puritan vibe of settling the new world, New Amsterdam, like colonialism, kind of like the birth of a country. Like there is something about the timing of all of this and choosing to set it where he does that I think does actually work and feels authentic, and carry that forward to the present day, that kind of American sense of like their past history, and kind of bringing it forward to present day and how small towns function. All of that worked for me. I don't think for me it's that it didn't work set in the US. I think I would have also enjoyed it set in the Netherlands. And I was saying to Chris before we went live, like I went to Holland with my grandfather who was born in a really small town, really conservative town, like the kind of place where when you say the name of people know, they're like, oh, that place. That felt like it could have really worked there too. And I would have loved the choice. Like I don't read Dutch. I tried to learn Dutch once and my grandpa was like a terrible teacher. But I think it could have really worked for me had it stayed being set in this really small, insular, cut off Dutch village. But I don't think that means that it isn't successful where it's set. And I'm surprised by that, because I remember when we found all this stuff out after we had picked the book, I was a little pissed. I'm like, oh, it's going to be like Americanized, like it's going to take away from the story. And I don't think that's true. I do have to give credit that I think it really works in where it ended up. I just would have loved to have read the original.
If I had known going into it that it was originally set in the Netherlands, I would have been more angry by the choice, because I'm always in favor of keeping the translation, just translate the text. Like there's no need to like change the setting. It's like when they brought The Bridge over to the US. Do you remember The Bridge, that TV show that was set like the original, I've watched it translated, is set in like Norway. And it's a cop drama. Well, they brought it over to the US and they like changed it so like the bridge took place on the border of Mexico and the US, and it was crap. Like I'm always a fan, like, and it just always feels like there's this like need to like dumb things down for an American audience. And I really think it like undercuts, like, and maybe I'm being too optimistic about my fellow countrymen, but I feel like it just undercuts like the kind of like curiosity. Like
it assumes that an American audience wouldn't buy a book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, that like really annoys me. And like you know, and I think like especially the popularization of things like K-dramas and a lot of the media coming out of Asia right now, its popularity in the US is like it speaks to the fact like that you know, we have an appetite for what's going on in the rest of the world.
But again, I think that's like nobody could have predicted the success of BTS, I think. But like that's also more modern too. Like we think about the internet and what was available almost a decade ago now. And I do think it's a different thing. I agree with you 100%. I think there is an appetite now for, because I've been watching K-dramas and have been in Korean culture for like 8-9 years now, I would have never expected that this would have happened. And it is easier than it's ever been for me to like have like that access, but that's happening everywhere, right? Like you can be interested in literally any other place in the world and find like YouTubers who are vlogging about like what it's like to live there. Like that exists now. I don't know how much it existed 10 years ago, but I agree with you. Like I do think it does a disservice to assume that people wouldn't be interested. And you know what? I think the unfortunate truth is that probably is true in terms of publishing dollars and selling books. Setting selling a book to Americans about this witch in like a New England style small town is probably more successful than saying there's a small town in the Netherlands that this, like, I kind of see where it's coming, where they were coming from as like a publishing decision.
Maybe with something like a novel where you don't have the kind of as large of an audience base as you do for something like a television show, then you need to kind of make those decisions.
It's like when they redid Broadchurch, which I never finished either series, but Broadchurch was like hugely successful in the UK with David Tennant and Olivia Colman. They made an American version with David Tennant doing an American accent. Like, why? Like, why not recast? Like, it just seemed like a bizarre. I agree with you, Chris. Like, I just leave the thing where it is. Oh, it's Squid Game, right? Like, is the other big example, right? Like, leave the thing where it is, and people will come if it's
they're making
good.
The Train to Busan movie. Is that what it's called? They're making an American version, like set in the States. I'm like, what is the point? Just read subtitles, people. Like, God,
right?
Lord.
It's got Gong Yoo in it. He's amazing. You're going to want to watch the original. I think the other thing, like Korea does this too, right? The Good Doctor in the US is based on a K-drama, which I don't think people really know about. But Korea did a version of Entourage, what was it? Designated Survivor. They did a version of. Yeah, so like it does go both ways.
Yeah, and like there are times, I will say there are times when I do think the American version is better. Like the American version of House of Cards is better. The American version of The Office is better. I will fight people on that. I've like managed to get through like 3 episodes of the British version. I'm like, I want to throw myself off a bridge. Like I can't handle this.
Yeah, I do agree, though. It does seem weird. Like, just watch the British version of something. Like, and Chris, I take your point that if something is like an American version and it's way better, it's the decision in the first place to assume that, like, I don't know, just remake the show.
I will say, like, things like The Office.
I don't know the history of The Office.
I don't know. I feel like things like The Office, like, there's a certain type of, like, workplace culture in the US that like, different. Maybe that would not have translated as well. Because, like, I remember reading something where like basically like the thing about one of the big differences I guess between the US and the UK version is that like Michael Scott in the US version is like actually good at his job, even though he's like a bungling buffoon. Like he can sell paper, whereas I don't think that's necessarily true of the parallel character in the UK version. And basically they were saying when they made that decision, it was because like you could not sell the idea to an American audience of someone who got as far as Michael Scott did without having some skill, you know what I'm trying to say, or like being good at his job. And like that would have like really frustrated American audiences. Whereas like it would have felt more natural, like according to the article I read, I'm not trying to be an expert on Britain. Whereas it wouldn't have had the same kind of problem in the UK. So like I feel like I don't know. This is getting so off topic, but there are like certain changes I can see like how like settings might change or something like that. But something like this, where it's like a specific historical thing that took place in the Netherlands, like
and it's a book. Like I do think there's something different about the book format that like we get lots of books, and I think Americans, Canadians, whatever, we read tons of stuff that's set other places. I mean, not all places. But I guess I'm thinking too, like a lot has changed. Like in the last 5 years, the availability of stuff in translation, the market for stories that are not set in a traditional like Western setting. And again, not that a Dutch story is not also part of the West. It's not like we're talking about it being set somewhere like super different to our current experiences. But I do think Dutch history is quite different. And so some of the things that we were pulling on about like, I made a connection before we went live about the Salem witch trials. Like that sort of vibe is different in the Netherlands than it would have been. Like in the 17th century, the Netherlands doesn't exist as a country. Like there's the Spanish War. Like there's a lot of other stuff happening in that time period. It would have had a different historical connotation and a different vibe to it. And I would have loved it, but it would have felt very different, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think the incompetent boss is a stereotype everywhere. But in a show as ridiculous as The Office in a lot of ways, I think, you probably need some element of centering to make that work. Yeah.
So, I guess final thought. I'm the lone defender of HEX. I gave it 5 stars.
I
Loved
wouldn't
it.
DNF'd.
I'm going to pick up the new one that's coming out. He's got a new book called Echo that's coming out, and I don't know if it's in any way like a sequel or.
God, I hope he just starts with something new.
Let's see. The cover of it looks very similar to the cover of Hex.
Your cover is different than my like Kindle cover.
Okay, I'll read the little blurb for this one. It says, travel journalist and mountaineer Nick Grevers awakes from a coma to find that his climbing buddy, Augustin, is missing and presumed dead. Nick's own injuries are extensive as they are horrifying. His face wrapped in bandages and unable to speak, Nick claims amnesia, but he remembers everything. He remembers how he and Augustin were mysteriously drawn to the Maudit, a remote and scarcely documented peak in the Swiss Alps. He remembers how the slopes of Maudit were eerily quiet, and how, when they entered its valley, they got the ominous sense that they were not alone. He remembers something was waiting for them. But it isn't just the memory of the accident that haunts Nick. Something has awakened inside of him, something that endangers the lives of everyone around him. It's one thing to lose your life. It's another to lose your soul. Dun, dun, dun. So it does sound like it's a completely new story. I'm going to give it a go and read it.
I think some of that sounds like it could be good. I'm not a big fan of like possession storylines.
You were also excited about the conceit of this novel as well.
I know. So like, I'm never going to read it. Like, I'm never going to read it. I am, however, excited for next month.
Yes. Which is
going back to sci-fi. My book is being delivered today because I realized in a panic that the library does not have a copy, and our big like national chain here doesn't have trade paperback either. So I had to order from Amazon, which I don't really enjoy doing, but my copy should arrive today. So I'll be posting the chapter breakdowns in Discord in the next day or two. But yeah, Children of Time, right? The Adrian Tchaikovsky. Yep. He's written way more than I thought he had.
He's written so many books. The man is like actually a publishing giant. The thing is, I don't think a lot of them have like sold like crazy. Like he wrote a whole fantasy series.
There's with the wolf on the cover.
Well, he wrote that one, but then there's like a really long fantasy series, like 7 or 8 books.
Yeah, I googled it.
Bugs.
Yeah,
it's got like humanoid bug characters. Yeah, it's a ton of books in that series. And then he's written a lot of science fiction. He's published a lot. So Children of Time has a sequel, but it can be read as a standalone, from my understanding. Yeah. And I think it was initially intended as a standalone.
I think so. And I'm always a little skeptical when it's like it was going to be a standalone, but now we're tacking on this other book, and I'm like, well, we'll see.
It sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't, you know?
Yeah. This one won something. Was it the Nebula?
It might have. Let's see.
This is another case where it was like...
I think it won the Arthur C. Clarke Award.
That's possible. Yeah, okay, Zan, I'm the same. Like, I knew about Children of Time, and I had seen his name with that other, like, that wolf book that I mentioned, but, like, I did not realize that he had published as many books as he had. Like, there's a lot. So I'm kind of hoping I love him, like, because there's so much more to read. The bugs don't really interest me, I will say. That bug series, I'm like, he's very big on bugs.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of that series. Darn it, I'm trying to pull up the image of this book so I can tell you what award it won, and my computer is being very slow.
Yeah.
Yes, it did win the Arthur C. Clarke Award.
Lovely.
So yeah, this is definitely one of his more beloved books. And I think it was Caitlin at Kitty G who's a pretty big fan of this one, and a few other people. And usually Caitlin's and I's tastes are fairly similar, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. He's got another book out just now. I think I have a galley copy of, was it Shards of Earth?
I think that's the sequel.
I can't remember. Go Gadget iPad. I forgot. I've got so many galleys that I have not read yet. Can I just say? Oh yeah, Shards of Earth.
I have basically quit trying to get galleys from NetGalley.
It's annoying. Like, honestly, it's kind of nice in some respects. Like, I get really excited about having new books, but like I rarely read them before they publish anyway.
Exactly. So. And like guess how what my response ratio is.
Oh, real bad, I bet.
0.
Oh, I'm at like 40.
0.
I'm at like 40%. I'm fine.
I'll put 40%.
I worked really hard to get to my 40%. I've got like 150 unread books that I've been approved for.
Like, I guess I hardly ever request, but like The one time I got one was when I got The Wolf by Leo Carew, and it's
Mhm.
so uncomfortable if you hate the book. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
I DNF'd that book, and I felt
You can give
uncomfortable.
that option. You can say you won't be providing feedback, and you can say I did not finish. And I usually just say
Oh,
like,
really?
thanks so much for sharing this, but it's not for me, and I'm not going to give a review because it would be unfair.
That's probably better than what I did. Uh,
I try to go through and clear that stuff out because there have been things I've requested. I try to be really selective now and only request books by authors that I know or big buzzy like debuts that I've heard about.
I don't. To be honest, I don't like getting arcs at all. Like I got an
Oh,
email. What?
did I tell you I got the new Guy K?
Oh,
Did
you
I
did
tell
tell me
you
that.
that? Yeah. So that's out next May. I do have a galley copy. I probably will read that ahead. But again, these are few and far between where I would actually go ahead. Uh,
If
you
you
don't?
are a bookseller or a librarian, that's another way to use NetGalley, right?
Yeah. Like my profile in NetGalley has both like my librarian kind of credentials and then also my like social like YouTube stuff. Not that I've
Yeah.
been posting there. And I mean, publishers will deny you for whatever, but
Oh yeah.
anybody can have like I think if you're interested, make up a profile, do the best you can with like if like what you're able to like do for the book is basically what they want to know.
Yeah.
And just ask. And if they don't approve you, they don't approve you. But like anybody can create an account.
Yeah. I was really mad because the one time I tried, so I don't like getting arcs in general. Like recently, a fairly big publisher contacted me to send me arcs, and I was
Mhm.
like, at first I was excited. I was like, oh cool, like get to get these books, blah blah blah. And then like the thought hit me of like, then I have to read them, and then I have to review them, and I have to get that up in time, and blah 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 blah. And this is like establishing a kind of a relationship. And I was like, actually, I'm just not interested. Like I'm not accepting arcs of any kind anymore. Like, if I really want one, I'll like email or something. But like, no,
Yeah.
like
And I
that.
think it depends
It
on what
gets
the publisher
overwhelming.
expects, right?
Yeah,
Like sometimes they just want to send you the book and like it's up to you what you do with it. But if they're like, we would like a review posted like
yeah.
within 2 weeks of publishing, whatever,
Oh,
like
yeah. No.
no. Yeah, I'm not. I
Oh, yeah. That's
yeah,
very true.
I'm really
Instagram
excited. I mean,
counts.
I'm gonna love the new GGK. Like of course I am.
What's it called again? I would ask, right?
Something about the sea,
Yeah.
but not
Ocean,
Cedar and
ocean,
Chloe.
ocean.
I have the new Emily St. John Mandel as well.
Oh, do you?
I do. It's called All the Seas of the World,
That's it.
and it's in the same kind of area as A Brightness Long Ago, I
Oh,
think.
Amy Lynn, you are not a loser. You are probably happier than like all of us
Oh
who are
yeah,
using
I
it.
deleted most of my social media.
I need to delete Twitter. I spend an obnoxious amount of time on Twitter.
Oh, I don't. I scroll
I
through
need to get rid of
Instagram
it.
quite a bit, but I never post on Instagram. Is the thing.
I don't post much on Instagram either because I have no aesthetic sensibilities, and it feels like I need to have like an aesthetic. Like you see some people's
Yeah, of course.
profiles.
Like yeah.
Do you ever look through Rick
Oh
McDonnell's
yeah,
profile?
I love his stuff.
I love his profile. Like just scrolling through like his like
It's stunning. He does these great like book covers and quotes.
God, I know. And
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, oh, let me
I
put
know.
my book over some piece of wood.
Rick's a superstar.
So yeah, Instagram stresses me out that way.
Let's not do that.
Okay. Well,
All
we
right,
have talked
we
a
should
really long
go.
time.
We've
We
talked
should
for a long
go.
time. I gotta go shovel snow. Like I
Yeah.
literally need to check and see if my driveway is clear or not.
But thank you guys for coming. I'm sorry that I'm the only person who loved this book, but also not sorry in a way because it needs a defender. It needs
It needed one. It would have
yeah,
been really bad if it
it
didn't
needs
have
a
one.
white knight.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I hope everyone does well, and we'll be back for Children of Time.
And we'll
I know.
post the date because we're going to run into the holiday season there. So
Oh
Chris and I
Jesus, you're
will
right.
discuss. Oh, and also Chris and I are going to talk about
New
the
books.
upcoming book selections later today, and we'll post them in the Discord as soon as we have them because we know we're a little bit behind. Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
We will see you next month.
Bye.